They say the road to hell is paved with good intentions. Well, in America, we didn't just pave that road. We built a 10-lane superhighway of absolute incompetence. From accidentally inventing the mafia to incinerating entire houses over a spider, sometimes helping is the most destructive thing a human being can do. Here are 49 times trying to be the hero was a terrible, terrible idea. 1. You know that moment when you try to be the hero of the cul-de-sac? You see your neighbor's trash can sitting at the bottom of the driveway and decide to do a good deed. You grab the handle, strutting up the driveway like a suburban knight in shining armor until you hit a crack in the pavement. The can doesn't just tip over, it explodes. We are talking about a week's worth of coffee grounds, questionable leftovers, and unmentionable bathroom waste spread across their pristine, manicured lawn. Now, instead of receiving a thank you note, you are on your hands and knees scraping up wet lasagna while the neighbor watches you from behind their blinds, wondering why you hate them. 2. Florida has a long history of making decisions that sound like the setup to a bad joke. Back in the 1990s, in a stroke of absolute brilliance, the state allowed the trade of exotic pets to basically go unchecked to help the economy. People bought cute little Burmese pythons, realized that snakes eventually grow into giant monsters, and released them into the swamps. The result? The Everglades are now infested with tens of thousands of massive, 18-foot constrictors that are eating everything in sight. They have decimated the raccoon and possum populations and are now literally fighting alligators for the top spot on the food chain. Nice work, Florida! 3. There is a rite of passage for every American teenager trying to help out around the house without actually asking how things work. They see a full dishwasher and think, I got this. But instead of finding the specific dishwasher detergent, they grab the bottle of Dawn dish soap from the sink and fill the cup to the brim. It seems logical, right? Soap is soap. Wrong. 30 minutes later, the kitchen looks like a foam party at a cheap nightclub. The suds expand with terrifying force, oozing out of the machine and covering the entire floor in a slippery white apocalypse that takes 4 hours and every towel in the house to clean up. 4. In Seattle, a man decided that a single spider in his laundry room was a threat-level midnight event. Instead of grabbing a shoe, a newspaper, or even a vacuum cleaner like a rational human being, he improvised a flamethrower using a can of spray paint and a lighter. While he did technically succeed in killing the spider, he also succeeded in setting his wall on fire. The blaze quickly got out of control, causing $60,000 in damage to his home and requiring the fire department to save the rest of the house. I guess the spider's gone, but that is one expensive pest control bill. 5. This happens in living rooms across America every weekend. A husband spots a tiny scuff on the wall and thinks he can be helpful by touching it up. He digs through the garage, finds a crusty old can labeled "Living Room Beige," and slaps a coat over the mark. He pats himself on the back for a job well done. But paint oxidizes and fades over time, and he has no clue that his wife repainted that wall 3 years ago with a slightly different shade. When it dries, he hasn't fixed the scuff. He has created a giant, mismatched splotch that looks like a skin disease on the drywall. 6. During the World Wars, the people of Pitcher, Oklahoma, were told they were the ultimate patriots. They mined the lead and zinc that fueled the American war machine, producing over half of the metal used in the bullets and bombs. They were helping win the war. But once the wars were over, the bill came due. The mining operations left the town sitting on hollow ground surrounded by mountains of toxic waste. The government eventually declared the entire town a Superfund site, bought out the residents, and bulldozed the buildings. They helped save the world, and in return, their hometown was wiped off the map. 7. Following the Mexican-American War, the United States signed the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo. On paper, this was supposed to help the Mexican citizens living in the newly acquired territories by guaranteeing their property rights would be respected. It was a nice sentiment. In reality, the American legal system showed up and immediately started shredding those rights. Through a combination of biased courts, language barriers, and predatory lawyers, these landowners were stripped of millions of acres of land, The help turned out to be nothing more than a slow-motion robbery legalized by a gavel. 8. In 2009, the government had a brainwave to save the auto industry and the environment simultaneously with cash for clunkers. The plan was to give people money to trade in their old gas guzzlers for new, efficient cars. To ensure the old cars never polluted again, dealers were required to pour liquid glass into the engines, seizing them up permanently. While it sold some new cars, it also destroyed nearly 700,000 perfectly good used vehicles. This decimated the supply of affordable cars and spare parts, effectively screwing over the poor people who relied on cheap beaters to get to work. Talk about backfiring. 9. For decades, the United States Forest Service operated under the misguided belief that every single fire was the enemy. They adopted a zero-tolerance policy, rushing to snuff out every spark like an overprotective parent guarding a toddler. It sounded great on paper. Save the trees, right? But nature had other plans. By stopping the small, natural ground fires that usually clear out the underbrush, they allowed the forest to turn into massive, ticking time bombs of dead wood and dry needles. Now, instead of manageable clearings, we get catastrophic megafires that burn so hot, they turn the soil into glass and incinerate entire ecosystems. Thanks for the help, Smokey. 10. Back in the 1980s, the government ramped up the war on drugs with a brilliant tool called civil asset forfeiture. The idea was to hit the drug lords where it hurts, their wallets. In practice, however, it gave police the power to pull you over, decide your cash looks suspicious, and just take it without ever charging you with a crime. It turned into a legalized shakedown where departments padded their budgets by seizing cars and life savings from regular people on the flimsiest suspicions. They were supposed to be fighting crime, but in many cases they ended up operating like the very highwaymen they were meant to catch. 11. There is a special place in hiking hell for the person who decides to help by building their own rock cairns on the trail. They stack a pile of stones, thinking they are leaving a whimsical artistic mark or guiding the way for future travelers. But usually they build these little monuments in completely the wrong spot because they have no idea what they are doing. Now, the next hiker comes along, sees the rocks, assumes it is an official trail marker, and dutifully walks off a cliff or into a dense patch of poison ivy. You are not a trailblazer. You are just confusing people who are already exhausted and dehydrated. 12. We all know that person who treats their recycling bin like a religious altar. They stand at the sink for 10 minutes, scrubbing a single yogurt cup with scalding hot water and dish soap until it sparkles. They think they are saving the planet one dairy container at a time. In reality, they just wasted 3 gallons of clean, processed water and the energy to heat it, all to salvage a piece of plastic worth less than a fraction of a penny. The environmental footprint of their cleaning ritual is 10 times worse than just throwing the dirty cup in the trash. It is performative environmentalism at its finest. 13. Before World War II made it unpopular for obvious reasons, the American elite were obsessed with helping society through eugenics. They convinced themselves that they could breed a better human race by stopping the wrong people from having kids. This wasn't just idle talk. Over 30 states passed laws allowing the government to forcibly sterilize people they deemed unfit, mostly the poor, minorities, and the disabled. It was a horrific violation of human rights, masquerading as benevolent science, proving that the road to hell is paved with the intentions of people who think they know better than everyone else. 14. You visit your grandparents and see them juggling 3 different remotes just to watch the news. Being the helpful grandkid, you decide to solve their problem with a high-tech, universal remote. You spend 2 hours sweating over instruction manuals and codes, finally syncing the devices. You hand it over with a smile, thinking you have saved the day. The next day, you get a frantic call because they hit one wrong button, and now the TV is on input 4, the soundbar is mute, and the cable box is speaking Spanish. You didn't simplify their life, you just gave them a sleek black brick they are afraid to touch. 15. We all have that one friend who insists they are a computer genius because they read a forum post once. When you mention your laptop is acting up, they jump in to optimize it for you. They proceed to install 4 different free antivirus programs, a registry cleaner, and some shady PC speed booster. When they hand it back, your computer takes 20 minutes to boot up and is constantly screaming at you with pop-ups asking for money to fix errors that the software itself created. They didn't fix your computer. They gave it a digital autoimmune disease that is harder to cure than the original virus. 16. In the contest for worst parenting decision of the century, we have the wealthy fathers caught in the Varsity Blues scandal. To help his son get into a prestigious university, one genius decided that grades weren't enough. He paid to have his son's face crudely photoshopped onto the body of a real water polo player to fake an athletic profile. Because nothing says, "I believe in my child's potential," like literally pasting their head onto someone else's achievements. It didn't land the kid a degree, but it did land the dad a federal indictment and a permanent spot in the National Hall of Shame. 17. You get a new smart TV and your helpful friend offers to set it up while you grab a beer. They breeze through the setup menu, clicking Agree and Next on every single screen without reading a word. Congratulations! Thanks to their efficiency, you have just legally consented to let the manufacturer record your voice commands, track every show you watch, and sell that data to third-party advertisers. Your new television isn't just a screen. It is a corporate spy sitting in your living room, taking notes on your habits, all because your friend couldn't be bothered to uncheck a few boxes. 18. Boston had a traffic problem and the solution was simple. Just bury the highway. It was called the Big Dig, and it was supposed to be a quick $3 billion fix to help commuters. Instead, it turned into the most expensive highway project in American history, dragging on for decades and ballooning to over $24 billion. It featured leaking tunnels, falling concrete, and enough corruption to fill a library. It became a global punchline for government incompetence. Sure, the traffic is hidden now, but the financial and emotional scars on the city are still very much visible to the naked eye. 19. After World War II, urban planners wanted to help returning GIs live the American dream. Their solution was the modern suburb, endless rows of identical houses with identical lawns. It seemed like paradise compared to cramped city apartments. But this help created a new kind of hell called urban sprawl. Suddenly, you needed a car to buy a quart of milk, your commute took an hour, and you felt completely isolated in a sea of beige siding. They solved the housing crisis by designing a lifestyle that is bad for the environment, bad for your waistline, and terrible for your social life. 20. There is a domestic terrorist living in many American homes, and they go by the name of the helpful partner doing laundry. They see a pile of clothes and decide to be a hero by shoving everything, red socks, white dress shirts, delicate linens, into the machine at once. Then, because they believe heat equals cleanliness, they crank the dial to sanitize. The result is a load of laundry that looks like it was murdered by a flamingo. The white shirts are now a patchy, tie-dyed pink, and your favorite expensive wool sweater has shrunk so drastically it would barely fit a malnourished chihuahua. They didn't do chores. They destroyed your wardrobe. 21. A Florida woman went on vacation and made the mistake of asking her brother to water her plants. He saw her wooden deck looking a bit weathered and decided to go above and beyond with a pressure washer. But he didn't know that wood is soft, and industrial pressure washers are basically water lasers. He stripped the wood so aggressively that he shredded the grain, turning the smooth planks into a furry, splinter-filled nightmare that looked like shredded wheat. When she came home, she didn't have a clean deck. She had a wooden surface that required a belt sander and a tetanus shot just to walk on. 22. In Wisconsin, a man faced the age-old problem of locking his keys in his car. Instead of calling a locksmith or using a coat hanger like a normal person, he decided to use redneck engineering. He grabbed his high-powered hunting rifle and fired a shot directly at the door handle, assuming it would pop the lock like in the movies. Physics had other plans. The bullet obliterated the lock, traveled through the door, shattered the dashboard, and exited through the passenger window. He successfully opened the car, but he also totaled it in the process. That is some expensive roadside assistance. 23. Nothing strikes fear into the heart of a food lover quite like a spouse on a fridge-cleaning rampage. They decide to help by purging anything that looks slightly older than 20 minutes. You come home dreaming of that leftover ribeye steak or the expensive aged Parmesan cheese you bought, only to find the fridge barren. They threw it all out because it looked weird, or we didn't have a date on it. They also tossed the 24-hour marinade you prepped for tonight's dinner. They call it cleaning. You call it a culinary hate crime against good taste and your wallet. 24. During the summer of 1916, people in New Jersey were terrified of shark attacks, and panic makes people do incredibly stupid things. Coastal towns decided the best way to help protect swimmers was to declare war on the Atlantic Ocean. Vigilante mobs hopped into motorboats armed with high-powered rifles and crates of dynamite. They spent days tossing explosives into the water and shooting at shadows. They didn't kill the shark responsible for the attacks, but they did manage to massacre thousands of innocent fish and terrorize the entire coastline with deafening explosions. It was less pest control and more fishing with TNT. 25. To help his friend back a rented moving truck into a tight spot, a man stands behind the vehicle delivering confident hand signals. He keeps waving, come back, completely ignoring the overhang of the roof or the low-hanging tree branch. He guides the driver with the precision of an air traffic controller right up until the sickening sound of metal crunching against concrete. He shouts, stop, about 2 seconds after the taillight is already shattered. His guidance turned a parking job into an insurance claim. 26. San Francisco has always been a laboratory for well-intentioned social experiments that go horribly wrong. In the early 2000s, the city launched Care Not Cash, a program designed to help the homeless by slashing cash handouts in favor of services. But before that, the cash handouts themselves were the help, and they backfired spectacularly. It turned out that handing no-strings-attached money to people struggling with addiction didn't help them find housing. It helped them find their next fix. The death rate from overdoses spiked, and the city became a magnet for people looking for a subsidized lifestyle rather than a hand-up. 27. We all know that one dad who treats Christmas decorations like a competitive sport. In Illinois, a father decided to win the neighborhood lighting contest by turning his front lawn into a landing strip for aliens. He daisy-chained so many extension cords together to power his army of inflatable snowmen and blinding LEDs that he ignored every basic rule of electrical safety. When he flipped the switch, he didn't just blow a fuse. He overloaded the local transformer and caused a rolling brownout for 3 of his neighbors on Christmas Eve. He won the contest, but he definitely lost the popularity vote on the block. 28. This is a classic case of the Bambi syndrome. A family in Colorado found a baby deer curled up in the grass and, assuming it was abandoned, decided to save it by bringing it into their living room. They were petting it and feeling like Disney characters until the mother deer returned. Finding her baby gone, she tracked the scent to the house and went full SWAT team. The doe crashed through the sliding glass door, thrashing around the living room in a panic, destroying furniture and terrifying the family before retrieving her fawn. Nature doesn't need your help, it needs you to leave it alone. 29. You spill a little red wine on a white carpet, and your friend immediately yells, pour salt on it. It is an old wives' tale that refuses to die. So, to be helpful, she dumps an entire canister of Morton salt onto the damp stain. The theory is that it absorbs the wine. The reality is that the salt dissolves into the liquid, creating a saline brine that sets the dye into the fibers permanently. When it dries, you don't have a clean carpet. You have a rock-hard, crusty salt lick in the middle of your floor that no vacuum cleaner on Earth can remove. 30. In Ohio, a man was grilling burgers when a grease fire flared up. In a moment of panic and terrible judgment, he tried to help by dousing the flames with the only liquid he had in his hand, a can of cheap beer. He forgot that beer is mostly water, and water makes grease fires explode. The water hit the superheated oil, vaporized instantly, and carried the burning grease into a massive fireball that engulfed the grill. He successfully singed off his eyebrows and set his porch railing on fire. Next time, just close the lid, genius. 31. A woman wanted to do a nice thing for her sister by deep cleaning her bathroom as a surprise while she was out. She looked at the cleaning supplies and thought, if bleach is good and ammonia is good, then mixing them must be twice as good. She proceeded to mix the two chemicals in a bucket, unwittingly creating chloramine gas, a toxic vapor similar to mustard gas used in World War I. The fumes were so overpowering that she had to flee the apartment, and the fire department had to be called to ventilate the entire building. The bathroom was definitely not clean, but it was legally a hazmat zone. 32. You invite a helpful friend over for dinner, and afterward, they insist on cleaning up. You relax in the living room, unaware of the crime being committed in the kitchen. They find your grandmother's vintage cast iron skillet, seasoned to perfection over 50 years, and decide it looks dirty. They proceed to scrub it with harsh soap and steel wool until it shines like a new chrome bumper. They proudly present the stripped, ruined pan, having successfully erased 3 generations of flavor and non-stick seasoning in 5 minutes of misguided, aggressive cleaning. 33. A guy in Florida was helping his buddy move, and they had to transport a large, heavy glass tabletop. Wanting to protect the glass from scratches in the metal truck bed, the helpful friend wrapped it in a thick, soft moving blanket. It seemed like a smart idea until they hit the first stoplight. Because he didn't strap it down, the glass on the slick blanket acted like a sled. It slid forward, tapped the back of the truck cab, and shattered into roughly 10 million pieces. The blanket protected it from scratches, but it didn't protect it from stupidity. 34. In 1986, the city of Cleveland decided to help a charity and put the city on the map by releasing 1.5 million balloons simultaneously. It was called Balloon Fest, and it was supposed to be a beautiful spectacle. Instead, a cold front pushed the balloons back down over the city and Lake Erie. The balloons clogged the waterways and shut down a local airport runway. Tragically, the Coast Guard was searching for 2 missing fishermen at that exact moment, but they couldn't see anything because the water was covered in a million colorful spheres. The helpful stunt turned into an environmental disaster. 35. A teenage boy finally convinces his dad to let him help with the family car maintenance. It is a rite of passage. He proudly jacks up the car, drains the dirty sludge, and feels like a real mechanic. Then, he grabs the 5-quart jug of premium, expensive synthetic oil and begins pouring it into the engine block. It flows in smoothly. It also flows out smoothly, directly onto the garage floor, because in his excitement, he forgot to put the drain plug back in. They both stand there in silence, watching $50 of liquid gold create a slick, hazardous lake around their sneakers. 36. The Cold War paranoia drove the CIA to do some truly unhinged things, but Project Acoustic Kitty takes the cake. In the 1960s, they spent millions of taxpayer dollars surgically implanting a microphone in a cat's ear and a transmitter at the base of its skull to spy on the Soviets. They thought it was genius. No one suspects a cat. On its very first field test in Washington, D.C., agents released the cyborg feline from a van. It didn't infiltrate the embassy. It wandered into the street and was immediately flattened by a taxi. 5 years of work and millions of dollars gone in 10 seconds. 37. There is always that one dinner guest who thinks they are the dog whisperer. They want to help the poor, begging dog feel included, so they sneak it some food under the table. "Oh, he loves it," they say, tossing down a grape or a fried onion ring. They have no idea that grapes cause kidney failure and onions destroy red blood cells in canines. Their little treat turns a pleasant evening into a midnight race to the emergency vet, a stomach-pumping procedure, and a $1,000 bill that the helpful guest usually forgets to offer to pay. 38. In the late 1800s, sugarcane plantation owners in Hawaii were losing money because rats were eating the crops. Someone had the bright idea to import the mongoose, a natural predator of rats, to help solve the problem. It sounded logical, except for one massive biological oversight. Rats are nocturnal, and mongooses are diurnal. They literally worked opposite shifts. The rats ate sugar all night while the mongooses slept, and the mongooses ate native birds all day while the rats slept. They never met. Now Hawaii just has 2 invasive pest problems instead of 1. 39. You see a stranded motorist and think, I can help, I have jumper cables. You pull up, pop the hood, and attach the clamps with the confidence of a NASCAR pit crew. But in your haste to be the hero, you cross the streams. You connect the red clamp to the black terminal and the black to the red. Instead of a helpful spark of life, you send a massive surge of reversed polarity through the system. You don't start their car. You fry the alternators and the onboard computers of both vehicles. Congratulations, now nobody is going anywhere. 40. In the 1970s, the US government decided to help commercial fish farms and sewage treatment plants clean up algae. Their solution was to import Asian carp, a fish known for being a vacuum cleaner. But nature always finds a way to escape. The carp got into the Mississippi River system and went on a rampage. They eat so much plankton they starve out native species. Worse, they get startled by boat engines and launch themselves 10 feet into the air. Now, a relaxing boat ride involves dodging 20-pound flying fish that can break your nose. 41. A soft-hearted man in California walked into his garage, saw a panicked bird flying in circles, and decided to play air traffic controller. He didn't want to scare it, so he gently waved his arms, trying to guide it toward the sunlight. But the bird, lacking any understanding of human architecture or exit signs, flew straight up into the rafters. It landed directly on the emergency release cord of the automatic garage door. The latch disengaged with a loud clack. The heavy door slammed shut, and suddenly the helpful man was trapped in pitch darkness with the very bird he was trying to evict. The rescue mission turned into a hostage situation. 42. Eugene Schieffelin was a man who loved Shakespeare way too much. In 1890, he decided that America would be helped by having every bird species mentioned in the Bard's plays. So he released about 100 European starlings in Central Park. It seemed like a poetic gesture. Today, those 100 birds have exploded into a population of over 200 million. They form massive, sky-darkening flocks that destroy billions of dollars in crops, spread disease, and chase away native birds. It was a literary tribute that turned into an ecological nightmare. 43. A homeowner in rural Alabama saw a wasp nest under his porch and decided to save his family the cost of an exterminator. He didn't grab a spray can, he grabbed a baseball bat. He figured he could knock it down and run away before the wasps knew what happened. He took a mighty swing, connected perfectly, and smashed the nest to pieces. Unfortunately, the wasps were faster than his running speed. He was immediately enveloped in a buzzing cloud of fury. He traded a $40 pest control fee for a trip to the emergency room and a body full of venom. 44. It sounds like the plot of a cartoon, but a retiree in Oregon was deadly serious about helping his lawn by removing a gopher. He tried flooding the hole with water. Nothing. He tried smoke bombs. Nothing. Frustrated, he escalated to chemical warfare. He pumped a significant amount of propane into the gopher hole and tossed in a match. The ground didn't just pop, it detonated. The explosion launched dirt, grass, and rocks 50 feet into the air, shattered his windows, and left a crater the size of a Hyundai in his backyard. The gopher was never found, but neither was the lawn. 45. Two roommates in a third-floor apartment bought a massive sectional couch that physically couldn't fit up the narrow stairwell. Instead of returning it, they decided to help the situation by using their combined brainpower, which wasn't much. They tied a rope around the sofa and attempted to hoist it up over the balcony railing like medieval siege engineers. It was working perfectly until gravity and fatigue kicked in. The rope slipped through their blistered hands, and the brand new furniture plummeted 3 stories. It hit the pavement with a sickening crunch, exploding into a pile of expensive firewood, foam, and fabric. They didn't furnish their apartment, they just bombed the sidewalk. 46. In 1930, the US economy was tanking, and the government desperately wanted to help. They passed the Smoot-Hawley Tariff Act to protect American businesses by raising taxes on imported goods. It was supposed to save jobs. Instead, it started a global trade war. Every other country retaliated by taxing American goods. International trade froze, exports collapsed, and the Great Depression got significantly deeper and longer. It is widely considered one of the single stupidest economic moves in history, proving that helpful government intervention can sometimes just be an anchor tied to a drowning man. 47. The government decided to help the moral fabric of the nation in 1920 by banning alcohol. They thought prohibition would reduce crime, improve health, and make everyone happier. Instead, it was the greatest gift organized crime ever received. It turned small-time thugs into millionaire kingpins like Al Capone, corrupted the police force, and led to thousands of deaths from people drinking tainted industrial alcohol. The government eventually had to admit that their help had turned the entire country into a speakeasy and repealed the law, but the damage was done. 48. We all know the DIY hero who refuses to call a plumber because it's an easy fix. He sees a small drip under the sink and decides to help save the family $200. He grabs a wrench and starts cranking on a pipe that is clearly rusted shut. He ignores the creaking sound until… snap. The pipe shears off completely. Now, instead of a slow drip, there is a geyser of high-pressure municipal water blasting into his face and flooding the kitchen cabinets. He saved $200 on a plumber but caused $5,000 in water damage to the flooring. That is some simplified economics. 49. On a freezing winter morning, a helpful husband sees his wife's car windshield is covered in a thick layer of ice. He thinks he can save her 10 minutes of scraping by using a life hack he definitely didn't verify. He boils a pot of water and marches outside, triumphantly pouring the scalding liquid onto the frozen glass. He expects the ice to melt away like magic. Instead, he gets a physics lesson in thermal shock. The rapid temperature change causes the windshield to instantly shatter into a spiderweb of a million cracks. He successfully removed the ice, but he also removed the ability to see out of the car. All right, be honest. I know you've done at least one of these. Did you fix the plumbing until it flooded? Did you scrub the seasoning off a cast iron pan? Go to the comments and confess your single biggest helpful disaster right now. Don't be shy, we are all judging you anyway. And if you manage to watch this without setting your device on fire, hit that subscribe button. You've earned it.